Oh, I'm sorry. Hello. Duh. Hi. I'm Bob Gray with Your City, Your County. And we're very pleased and proud to have with us today. This'll make the bloopers, I think, Matt. We have with us today, excuse me, Matt Joski, who is the sheriff of Kewaunee County. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me once again.
Once again, thank you very much. And you caught me being unalert.
That's
again
all right. You're
this time.
preparing. You're a man of preparation.
Oh, yes. Last minute thoughts. It seems like when we get together, it seems like one of the most common things we talk about, discuss, and then votes are taken, and then we discuss it again. How about the jail?
Yep, the gift that keeps giving.
Yes.
Yeah, we are about, we're a little over 8 years. I think we're actually coming up on 9 years of planning currently, as far as the current iteration of planning for the Kewaunee County Jail. And so we're at a sort of a different crossroads once again we find ourselves. We all are aware that last summer, actually almost 2 summers ago now, the bids came back higher than expected, which kind of put ice on the project. And since then we've been looking at different angles to come at it from to try to arrive at an effective, efficient facility, but trying to grab as much cost effectiveness as we can to really refine this thing down to the absolute bare bones. So in pursuit of that, the county has begun a process of retaining what's called an owner's representative. So an owner's rep is basically somebody that's going to manage this project and sort of be the liaison between contractors and the county, so that we make sure that at each step we're managing all the different expectations, right? We have compliance to DOC code. We have compliance to your overall building code. You have operational necessities, but all of that has to be balanced against budgetary resources, right? So that's really where this is at. So right now we're in conversations with a few options, and I'm looking forward to the county making a selection, getting this individual on board, and most likely the next step will then be the reissuance of the development and reissuance of RFP, and be able to put that out there and see what kind of bids we get back on a new refined scope.
Where does this person come from that you're looking at? And I don't mean specifically which person it is, but where do you find somebody that does that sort of
Sure,
thing?
and you actually have people that this is their specialty, that they actually, they're out there helping to manage these projects. And of course, what we're looking for are municipal projects, because they're very unique versus a commercial project, retail store or the like. We're looking at somebody that's got that experience in the municipalities, in that environment of government, limitations and oversight. So there are people out there that have a background in both, architecture, engineering, as well as product management or project management. So they're out there, and they've got a couple candidates, and they're going to be refining that. And I'm looking forward to seeing where that takes us.
Okay. And the county hires them to do this, I would think.
Correct. So the hope is, yes, there's a cost that comes with this, but the hope is then, and the anticipation is then, that cost will be recovered in the reduced cost of the overall project, because we're going to be avoiding things like change orders, things that are going to surprise us as the project goes along. If we can minimize those surprises, that results in cost savings.
And if you get a guy who does this all the time, he's going to, go, wow, yeah, I can handle that.
Right.
Whereas I know I'd hate to step into a situation like that and say, well, yeah, I'm going to build the jail,
Right.
And I'd forget the cells and I'd forget
Sure, we all bring our
service
expertise, our specialties to the table. So I mean, myself and my staff, we understand the operations. We understand what needs to happen at 2:00 in the morning when somebody's being brought in to be booked in, right? We understand the operational aspect, and the county, of course, they're more attuned to the budgetary aspect of it, the bonding, what it's going to take to make that happen. So to get somebody that's also then tuned up in regards to the project management piece of it, and all these have to intertwine. One not more important or less important than the other. We can't abandon operational necessity for budgetary limitations. We have to strike a balance, but we also can't just spend the checkbook because we're saying we need this, we need this, we need this. We have to find that balance.
Do you have any idea how much money you'll be able to save over what some of the past plans were?
No, at this time, it all depends really on the scope. I mean, that's the only way in which you really change the overall cost of any given project, whether that's your garage or whether that's a jail. It's it's going to be reduction in scope of the project or a reduction in the materials or a change in the materials, right? So we have to be careful there because in a correctional facility we can't just be using half-inch sheetrock from Menards. We've got certain detention grade materials we have to incorporate. So that's really that's going to be what's going to drive the cost, the scope, how we can reduce the scope, and then where we can find savings in materials without creating compromise to security.
And how about the calendar coming up now? Where do you see these various pieces being from now until we're ready maybe for another referendum or for the county if they decide to do it?
I'm hopeful if they get somebody on, let's say within the next 60 to 90 days, develop the RFP, get that on the street, maybe late spring, early summer, and try to keep that timetable going. But again, that's all dependent on the pieces all falling into place.
Okay. Any chance that we'd be ready by November?
As far as build, no.
No plans, or
right.
Not taking.
I think we'll be
it,
well along in the planning because we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and look at every wall, every door. So we've got some time we're going to have to invest, which is actually time that's going to be appreciated because we get to the next thing that we're going to talk about that is as important as that building is the staffing. Staffing is key because this is a 24/7 operation. And most people are aware that right now we run an operation where our jailers are our dispatchers and our dispatchers are our jailers. So we're doing double duty. Well, in this new facility, we're going to have to broaden that staffing footprint. We're no longer able to operate with just 2 people. We're going to have to broaden that a bit. So basically, in the last planning, it was approved that we would go up by 5 positions to be able to make this happen. Well, as you can imagine, in all environments, staffing is an issue. And we're seeing that in law enforcement, and specifically in the jail dispatch, trying to get people to apply for these jobs. So at the same time, we're trying to ramp up. I've got people leaving for retirements, people changing career paths, and people sometimes not making our training protocols. So all these things affect our ability to ramp up. So while the building plan is going on, I'm always very careful to remind everyone we have to be at the right place at the right time for staffing because we can't open the doors without the proper staffing. So we really have to walk both of these paths simultaneously to get where we need to be at an appropriate level. Because if we try to open the doors without the appropriate staff, the doors don't open. I can't. Again, it's a 24/7 operation. We're housing people. This isn't a garage or a shop or even an office building. This is a living facility. So that's the other part is the staffing. We're very lucky. We're on a constant recruitment campaign right now. We've got some new people starting up in the training process. So I'm optimistic, but I'm okay with the fact that this is kind of getting slow walked forward because again, we can't go any faster than our weakest link, and our weakest link right now is our staffing numbers. So we've got to make sure those two correlate together.
I'm getting the impression that the sheriff gig is a little harder than it may look to somebody from the outside.
You're balancing a lot of things.
I would imagine. Yes. Now with the staffing, I'm sure you go through a lot of training. Do you do most of that training here, or do these people? Do you send them elsewhere, or how do you do
all of
that?
our training is in-house. So when it comes time for people to apply, they basically come right into our agency. We've got a course right at FTO, a field training program that we walk them through. We start off very, very slowly, just having them be there, listening to the other dispatchers, shadowing the jailers, and then slowly we give them more responsibility, more duties, right, as they're getting more comfortable. So it's a process because not so much the jail you can throttle that as far as what you need to deal with and when. But dispatch, when those 911 phones are ringing, that's here and now. And so it's balancing all that. I always tell people it's like multitasking on steroids. It's the most intense experience, and we do get people that aren't able to make it. We hire them, we run them through the background checks. They seem like they're going to work out great, but to the benefit, or what I want to say, to the quality of the men and women that do that job, it's not easy, and it's not meant for everyone. So let's say out of every 5 we hire, we might get 2 that wash out. So we do have an attrition rate that not everybody's able to do that work. But we do all that training in-house, as well as even afterwards, like even patrol. In fact, I was just up by our training facility, and they're doing high-risk traffic stops. They're doing building clearing. So we do all of our training in-house. That saves money. That saves on overtime. And it just is something that then we can do them more frequently versus, let's say, 1 training per year. I would rather do smaller trainings more frequently because it's all about frequency and memory to know, okay, this is how I'm going to respond.
Yeah. And these people are compensated while they're doing all of
Absolutely.
this training, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
I
So yeah,
suppose
people
that-
are, if they're interested in it, it's on our website. So go to the Kewaunee County website. The application's there, the job description, and we welcome anybody to come apply and be part of our family.
Okay. Well, I know after meeting with you so many times here on the show that I think you'd be a fun guy to work with. So
It's a great environment. It really is. I mean, it's a family. It really is. And I think that's law enforcement in general, just because of the intensity of the things we deal with, it creates a bond that isn't there in a lot of different occupations. So yeah, we're a tight bunch.
yeah, that's good. And I know we've talked in the past about how Kewaunee County is certainly a smaller county than if you go to Milwaukee or Chicago or Minneapolis, but how this affects your relationship with people in the community as well. And I know we've discussed in the past how it's so important for you to be on a friendly basis with people and not just, oh, here comes the policeman, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah.
So
It's having that accessibility, that people are comfortable, because it's a relationship, right? It's a police community relationship. And even when things, aren't so good, or people have concerns, we have to be willing to keep those doors and those lines of communication open. Actually, right before I came here, I had somebody that had a concern with, with our operations and had questions. I said, absolutely, let's sit down. And we were
Yeah.
to sit down. I was providing them policy, helped them understand why we do what we do, and how sometimes from the outside it may look awkward or it may look weird, and say, okay, but these are the considerations. So a lot of what we have to do is awareness, because what we do is not normal. I mean, the
Yeah.
other part is they see what goes on in TV, which is pure fictional, and so then we have to try to we have to temper that with reality. Say, okay, I understand what you saw last night on TV, that they were able to get DNA from a soda can, right? But this is reality when it comes to how we investigate crimes.
yeah.
So yeah, it's all about relationships.
Yeah, and I'm sure each situation is so different. I'm sure, when you stop somebody, that may be like when I did, 3 stops earlier or something. But each one has to be, I would think, different, and you never know what responsibility you're going to have and how the other person is going to react.
That's really the essence of what we do. We have to react to or adjust our styles, our communication styles, the level at which we're interacting based on the person. If the person is calm and has a good demeanor, then we can react in a certain way. If all of a sudden they have a heightened level of anxiety or resistance, well, we have to adjust ours. So it really is that sort of what do they call it, like an emotional intelligence to be able to see, okay, this is how I'm going to be best in this situation.
Sure.
And it's not how I feel as an officer. I have to completely be respectful and empathize with how they feel. You could have a traffic stop where it's some young kid that's just having a great time and going a little too fast and needs to be taught a lesson. And a next traffic stop could be somebody that just had a tragic loss of a loved one, and they're on the way to a funeral home, or on their way to the hospital. So you have to realize that nothing is the same. No two contacts are the same.
Very different emotions.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested, let the sheriff know,
Yep.
and that's a little bit about the staff and so on. We've finally gotten into spring. One of my favorite seasons. Summer is my favorite, but spring, well, it's at least I know I'm getting in the right direction. There's a lot of things we have to think about in the spring. Hopefully snow is not one of them, but sometimes it may be. And ice and those sort of things. But what other tips do you have at this time of year that people should be thinking about?
Absolutely, Bob. So as we make that transition from spring to summer, we realize it's not a one and done. We realize that sometimes winter wins over and sometimes, spring wins over. And when those two seasons are kind of interacting as they play out, we get things like icy conditions, right? We get things like fog. So limited visibility. So understanding the volatility of these next few weeks as we transition, from what we've been into to what we hope to be into, there's going to be sort of a tug of war that goes on with Mother Nature. And sometimes that results in waking up and a road that was, just wet is now ice covered, right? Visibility that was great 5 minutes ago, you're now in thick fog. So understanding just how, the environment is changing around us with the seasons, and that we've got to be on our game. We have to be on our game and not make assumptions like, oh, it's April 16th, the road should be fine. Don't make those assumptions. And then, as people are trying to get out and enjoy it, realize that you're going to start to see that increase in pedestrians, bicyclists, people trying to get out and enjoy nature while all of this is still going on. So just really this time of year, we have to be on our game because, in summer, we can make the assumption, okay, the roads might be wet, but we know they're not going to be ice covered. We can't
Usually
make that
they
assumption
won't
in
be.
April.
I remember going up to Bailey's Harbor on the 4th of July, and it was snowing.
Okay.
That was the 4th of July, and I thought, well, maybe I forgot and I missed that, and maybe it didn't really happen. And I talked to somebody a couple of years ago, and he said, I was up in Bailey's Harbor one time on the 4th of July, and it was snowing. And I thought, it was true.
Headlamps lit. That's a big thing because when we talk about, misty days or foggy days, those headlight sensors aren't always triggered. And so be aware that it may require you to manually turn on your headlights. If you see that there's a diminished amount of visibility, there's nothing saying you can't manually turn on your headlights. But a lot of people, they just have the auto lights and they assume, my car knows. And again, from dark to light it knows, but when we talk about reduced visibility due to fog, maybe a light rain or mist, those headlights aren't on. And that makes a huge difference as far as visibility from other vehicles as well as pedestrians.
Now, if you have your windshield wipers on, you're supposed to have your lights on, aren't you?
That's sort of a rule of thumb, right? That's a rule of thumb. It's a good indicator that, if the conditions are such that you run your windshield wipers, good idea to turn on your headlamps. But the two aren't statutorily connected.
Okay.
But it is a good idea.
Okay.
That's the issue. A lot of this is just sort of common sense stuff, but we understand sometimes people just are thinking of other things.
Yeah. And I drove down here this morning, and it was raining quite a bit, and I had my windshield wipers on, and I thought, well, I guess my lights are on. I hope they were.
Right.
Nobody stopped me from your department. So.
Right. The other thing is water on the roads, understanding hydroplaning. Right now there's substantial rain coming down. When you get pockets on those roads, and not all of our roads are brand new, some of them are a year or two old, so those roads start to pocket out, and those can fill with water. And when you hit that at, say, 50, 55 miles an hour, be aware of the potential for hydroplaning. So just be aware that, good tires are always key, not just in the winter. Those good treads on a tire also help prevent hydroplaning in those watery conditions and those wet road conditions.
Yeah, and that hydroplaning is really like driving on ice, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't know where it's going to be. It's just like black ice, really. You just don't know where it's going to come upon you.
Good time to watch out for kids running around, too.
That
I'm
as
sure.
well.
Yeah, absolutely. You bet. You mentioned that, as we were talking before the show, that this is a time for communication appreciation, I believe.
So Public Safety Telecommunicators Appreciation Week. So those men and women that serve our communities on the other end of the line, the 911 lines, right? Our men and women down at the safety building that are answering those calls, paging fire, rescue, first responders, they're the critical key, right? I mean, without our dispatchers, those wonderful squad cars and fire trucks and ambulances, they're nothing more than lawn ornaments. They're not going anywhere. Right? It's those dispatchers that get that initial call and get the right resources to the right place at the right time. So a lot of times we forget about them. We focus on the cop cars and the officers or the fire departments, but we don't realize the key component behind all of that are those men and women answering those 911 calls and getting the right resources to the right place at the right time. So it's proper that every year in April, second week of April, that we recognize the men and women that serve our communities as dispatchers, as public safety communicators.
And I think too many people, like you say, think of just the people that they see on the street. And so that can be very important. Do you do many interviews, this is an interview, obviously, but do you do other interviews? I mean, like TV stations, do they come in? Radio, do they call you? Newspapers and so on.
Absolutely. And we have a great resource recently in Kewaunee County with Josh Vista, who's our promotions employee. So he's kind of in charge of the PIO component. And he's done a great job of reaching out to all departments saying, hey, is there something we can promote within your agency? So a few weeks ago, I actually did our drug collection program where he came and did a nice video. We had certain role players and just did a great job of then getting that out onto social media. I know that he's worked with emergency management, talking about like tornado awareness and different things regarding emergency management. So that's a great tool. But yeah, every chance you get, to reach out and communicate, to share what we do, because like I said earlier, what we do is unusual. It's kind of unique in what we do, and a lot of people sometimes may misunderstand it, may have a misconceived notion of what we do or why we do it. So the more we can have these kind of conversations and help them understand, well, this is why, this is the history of it, that's important.
Yeah, yeah. And I noticed that one of the TV stations, and I'm thinking that a bunch of them maybe, are doing more involvement with what the local communities are doing. Do you find that they come to you on that occasionally?
Occasionally. And again, when you're dealing with your larger media market, of the Fox Valley or Green Bay, we tend to be, kind of on the fringe. But they're very good. If we give them a call to say, hey, we've got this going on, come on out. Because you don't want them only coming out for the tragedies, right? We know that no matter how hard we try, that this community will experience tragedies. Well, then the media's, they want to be there and they want to get the scoop and they want to be up on the front. And that's good, and I understand it. But we also have to make sure we balance that with all the good stuff that goes on throughout the year.
Yeah, and I remember I worked in news at one time, short stint in Iowa, and we were always looking for stories there. If somebody sent us a news release, we go, "Oh, good, something I can do. I can do a job, and I can go out and do what I'm supposed to be doing." So,
and there's so much good, and I think that helps offset what we're seeing at the national level or even on the world scene, right? With all the anxiety and the hurt and all that, to realize there's a lot of good people doing a lot of great things locally, and that's where it all starts. I mean, if we're going to change the world, it's not going to start at the national level. It's not going to start it's going to start here at home. It's going to start with us. So as long as we're doing those positive things, helping each other out, interacting, that's how you change the world. But too often we don't give it its due diligence. We don't give it the due focus.
Yeah, it's too bad we can't operate the world more the way we do the local community. That would be nice. Maybe we'll start right here.
There we go.
And we'll build up from there. That sounds like a good plan. I know you do a lot for the community as well. There's one on social media. I know that you write articles for Door County Daily News, I believe. And you wrote an article recently about how we should all feel wealthy. Did a very good job with that.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe you could talk about that just a little bit.
Sure. So it all goes back. I have a real soft spot, sort of a real sense of urgency for talking about wellness. Because I think in the world today, a lot of that is lacking, this sense of wellness. And their wellness has these different components, whether that be spiritual, physical, mental, social, right?
Yeah.
And so this idea of getting our priorities back in place, because too often, and I use the tax season as the facilitator of this whole thought process, is we focus on what we have. What's all parked in the garage? How big is the house? What's our assets? What's our net worth? All these things. And we tend to tie, again, our net worth to something materialistic. But we need to change that and say, no, what's my net worth when I talk about who I am? What's my net worth in my relationships?
Yeah.
Right? What's the equity I put into? What's the investment I put into my relationships? Into my life, into those things that are going to make me a better person? Or are we just hung up on what's the bank statement look like? What's the checking account look like? Mind you, there's a place for that, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's a necessary evil that we have to have money, but let's not get hung up on it. And let's, instead of talking about our material wealth, let's talk about our wealth. Let's talk about our wealth and our friendships, in our relationships. How are we taking care of ourselves? Do we have physical wealth where we know we're doing well, getting exercise, eating right? So this idea of being able to say to ourselves, you know what, I'm rich beyond all comparisons. I'm rich, nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
I'm rich because of the people that enrich me. I'm rich because of the experiences that enrich me, and get away from the material tabulation and more towards the human.
Yeah, I notice the older I get, the more I feel the importance of that, and I wish that I would have realized that, 30 or 40 or 50 years ago.
Sure.
The importance of having friends. I've gone since the pandemic started. When cars go by my house, I'm out walking my little dog, and people will say, "Oh yeah, I saw you with a dog." I will wave at just about everybody that goes by, and I don't know all of them, but I keep thinking, golly, this is great, and they'll wave back at me. I've gotten people who will honk at me now, and wave and stuff. You find a few people that don't,
Yeah.
but I think it maybe, as I look at it, I'm helping somebody's day get a little bit better. Maybe they're having a problem that day.
You're spot on. I can't tell you how many people have come back to me later, and I gave them just a simple smile, a good morning, that came back and said, that made my day. And the other part is that actually it's somewhat greedy on my part, because I understand the science behind it, that when you're kind to someone else, when you remain positive, there's actually physiological benefits to yourself. So even when you're feeling bad, the best thing you can do to make yourself feel better, people think it's, I need to go out and maybe eat something or drink something. No, the best thing you can do to bring yourself out of a doldrum is to treat somebody else with kindness, to smile at somebody. There's a physiological connection there.
Yeah.
So when I'm running in the morning, I do exactly what you do. I make it a purpose, no matter how bad my run is. And I mean, I've run when it's 0 degrees or 11 below.
I'm not
and when
sure
cars
I
come
could.
by me, no matter how miserable, they may think, oh my God, that guy's got to be miserable. I always give them a big smile and a wave.
Yeah.
Because it's almost out of spite. Not not in a negative way, but a way of, no matter what your condition is, no matter where you might find yourself, there's no reason you can't still find optimism. You still can't show happiness.
Yeah.
That's a decision. That's a mental
Yes,
decision.
and I'm glad to hear you do that. That makes me feel very good. I'll go into a store, and somebody will be just walking through, looking kind of grumpy, and I'll say, "Well, good morning. Isn't this a great day? And what do you think of the bargain at at the banana factory, or at the banana, sales department or whatever?" And you get people to talk that you never thought would talk or anything, and you kind of go, they look so glum, and then you talk to them and they go, oh, well, yeah, and you kind of like to brighten up their day.
Yeah. I just came away with an amazing a recognition of that. I was telling you I was down at Fort Knox. So I was at a leadership training for the Army, and again, much younger people, smarter people, they brought a lot to the table, and I was sort of the old guy there. There's not a lot I could offer, but I did my best to always be positive and to be encouraging to all those soldiers around me. And at the end of the course, after it was all said and done, they basically put forth an award for the class motivator.
You got it?
I was honored in front of all these amazing men and women to walk up in front of that platoon and get the award for being the class motivator.
Good for you.
So if I brought
That's
nothing
great.
else to the table, right, I'm able to bring that sense of motivation.
Yeah, and I bet you got some of the other people who were in the class to think, wow, look what Sheriff Joski, or what
Yep.
Commander Joski,
Sergeant.
or Sergeant. Sorry, yeah. That's as far as I got to
That's
in the
all
Air
right.
Force. So that's good. One more thing we got to talk about is this is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Tell me how how you got involved in that and what your plans are to.
Absolutely. Well, you can
discuss
imagine.
that.
I mean, we're on the front lines of it. We're the ones that get that call, right? That call of that tragedy, of that horrific act. We're usually on the front side of that, as far as responding, investigating, and being there for the victims. And that's really what we can do. We are very blessed to have the Violence Intervention Project, who offers and provides advocacy, and that's a great resource. And so, from our realm of that, our piece of that is providing justice, right? And we provide justice by doing effective investigations, by making sure we put together an effective report, an effective product to hand to the district attorney, so that that victim can find justice and that the perpetrator gets justice, right? That's our piece of it. And the other part is bringing empathy and compassion to those victims, not just treat them like, okay, sir, ma'am, just the facts and only the facts, right? To be able to, even in our response in a criminal investigation, to be able to show empathy and compassion and let them know that we're there for them, right? That it's okay to tell their story, that it's okay to reach out. And that's what we've seen over the decades. You've seen actually an uptick in both domestic violence reports as well as sexual assaults. And that, you say, well, that can't be a good thing. Well, I would always temper that with some optimism by saying part of the reason is people are more willing to report it. So have the numbers of offenses actually gone up? I couldn't tell you for sure one way or the other. But I like to believe that from 20 years ago to today, we've created an environment where the victims are more willing and readily to say, this happened to me. And that I think is a step forward, that we create an environment where we're empowering the victims to let them know it is okay to report these things, it's okay to come forward, and you will have the support of the system. You'll have the support of the criminal justice system, you'll have support of advocates, that we're all here to support those victims.
And it's part of self-respect for both the perpetrator as well as the victim of those. Before I drove down here this morning, I was watching on the internet Facebook presentation. It lasted maybe 5 minutes or something, but it showed this group of guys that were making kind of obscene comments toward this woman. And she took the situation and turned it totally around to the point where the guy was very embarrassed, about what he'd done and so on. So I kind of see that happening on social media more. In that particular one, I just, somebody sent it to me. Well, I'll take a look at that. And I thought, that's really important.
It is, and that's another piece where, especially with their young people, is to build up the sense of self-confidence, of inner strength, that they can literally stand up to these people, whether that's bullying or whether that's outright harassment, whatever that is, to be able to give the skills to our young people to know, no, you stand up against that. You don't just cower. Because we talk a lot about bullying, and in a sense, this all kind of runs together, that bullies only exist because they have victims, right? And we've done anti-bullying campaigns. We've done anti-bullying presentations. We've focused on the bully. What we've got to do is build up the potential victims so that the bully is denied their victim. So that when they try to approach somebody and try to harass them or bully them, that person has the inner strength to say, no, I will not be your victim today. I will not be your victim. Pretty soon, we neutralize the bullies. They have no victims. So that's another way to approach this in looking at what you saw in that video. Somebody that has that confidence and inner strength to say, no, I will not be your victim today. Right?
Yeah.
Because typically when we deal with bullies, they buckle right away. Bullies they're just paper tigers. And the minute you show resistance, they usually just fade away. But if you show vulnerability, they will feed on that vulnerability.
Oh, yeah. I remember in grade school there was a bully who he always picked on me. I don't know why, but he did. And I remember later on, something happened to him. He got hurt or something, and he started crying. And I thought, you mean this guy cries too? They're people, and they just, and I didn't understand, and I still don't. I don't know what his family situation was, but I suspect it probably had something going a little haywire with it, and he had to take that out on other people.
Yeah, it's so interesting that we're getting to those conversations about how sometimes fear and hurt can manifest itself in anger, right, and violence. And to back that up, because when we talk about trying to really push back against violence of any nature, it starts with, okay, what's going on? This idea of trauma-informed care. What's going on with that person? Now, not saying that gives them an alibi, right? I mean, people still have to be held accountable for their actions. But we still have to be able to go back a level and say, okay, but why? Why is that person a bully? Well, if you peel away the layers, they're themselves hurting inside.
Sure.
So if we can address that, we're also dealing. But so it's multifaceted. It's interesting to look at it all because it all has to do with emotions. It all has to do with sense of self-awareness and kind of coming back to the emotional intelligence. People being able to throttle and self-regulate what they're going through, right? And that it doesn't give them license to try to beat somebody else down, to try to oppress somebody else, to say, this is my issue. I need to deal with it and not deflect it onto somebody else to try to make myself feel better.
Yeah, and we need to get them help.
Right. Right.
Okay. We have run out of time. This is always fun. Whenever I do this with you, Matt, it's great. I enjoy it very much. Thank you so much
thank you
for
again.
being here.
Can't wait till the next time.
Okay, come back next week. We'll do this again. We've been speaking with Matt Joski. He is the Kewaunee County Sheriff, and this has been Your City, Your County. We thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you will come back and see us. We'll be back, if everything goes okay, by next month, and we will see you once again. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you later. Bye.